This video is for the third assignment of the EDAB411 by Yunji Choi. Before going into the blog, I would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional custodians of the land which we meet. We pay our respects to the elder past, present, and future and acknowledge their spiritual connection to the country. This vlog will critically analyze and reflect the Aboriginal education policies in QLD and federally, along with demonstrating the significance and relevance of the Aboriginal education policies in our future role as a teacher. Furthermore, this vlog will identify strategies to enhance our effectiveness in the classroom, particularly for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. The aim of the blog is not only to critically reflect on what I had learned, but the aim is also to understand my role as a teacher to engage Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders and promote reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. Ever since the first fleet brought the first European settlers to Australia and the colonization has started, the Aboriginal culture has been dominated by European culture, which resulted in Aboriginals experiencing inequality. Education especially had the hardest impact of inequality. This is because teachers lack the cultural awareness, which leads to poor teaching quality of Aboriginal culture. It certainly doesn't help that according to the 2016 census, there were only 9,184 full qualified and registered Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islander teachers, which is only 2% of the teaching population. So to close the gap of education and overcome inequality, the Australian government has developed Aboriginal education policies to support Aboriginal education. One of the education policy is the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Education Strategy, which prioritizes to advance Aboriginal leadership, quality teaching and workforce development, culture and identity and partnership, along with literacy and numeracy of student attendance, school and child readiness, pathway to post-school options. The strategy is a very effective strategy that will allow the Aboriginal community to reconcile with the non-Indigenous community. By focusing on specific priorities, schools will be able to get Aboriginal students engaged in learning. However, when critically reflecting the strategies, there are some concerns with the policy. According to the data collected by ACARA in 2017, only one of the 8 areas, the Year 9 numeracy, was on track at the national level. The other areas were reported as below trajectory. This shows that although the strategy provided the right path to close the gap between the students, the results weren't as successful as predicted. The Queensland government also has strategies to assure every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander student succeeds. The government strategy sets direction on how they will improve Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander student success in state schools through 3 priorities. One is connection to culture through localized curriculum development and partnership with local communities. 2 is the hard expectations that by lifting expectations of curriculum delivery and student achievement, thus engaging students in opportunities that sees them thrive at school and excel academically in a supportive and inclusive environment. Third is meaningful pathways, which will lead to students being confident and empowered, thus contributing to a more prosperous Queensland through further education pathways and learning opportunities aligned with their aspirations. With this information, I was able to further my understanding. The readings helped my understanding of understanding the situation of the Aboriginals and what the government is trying to do to close the gap. I was also able to create a picture in my mind and assess the situation of Aboriginal students and education. Some teachers might not understand the significance of teaching students about the Aboriginal perspective of history and culture. They might think teaching Aboriginal perspectives doesn't relate to Aboriginal students' educational outcome. However, I would argue that we as non-Indigenous teachers should be aware of the Aboriginal perspective of history and culture and teach our students that perspective. By being aware and putting Aboriginal perspectives in our lessons, we as teachers, we will be able to reconcile Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. Putting Aboriginal perspective in lessons also engage the Aboriginal students and strengthens the relationship in the classroom. So why exactly do we need to incorporate Aboriginal perspectives in our lessons? One is because of the culturally responsive pedagogy that teachers would get. Lufrey states that the importance of knowing culturally responsive pedagogy as seen in the first quote. A culturally responsive teacher understands that students come to school with different beliefs, skills, and knowledge formed from their experience. They are also able to assist students by removing the barriers experienced by learners, which in turn supports the students' educational growth. The second quote by Lufway shows how this would be done. This means that culturally responsive teachers will be able to use the knowledge to provide quality Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander education. So what are some strategies to become culturally responsive teacher? Liu Flip interviewed Aboriginal students, teachers, and parents on what they think are the key points of being culturally responsive. The results are shown in the PowerPoint slide. There were several themes of what parents, students, and teachers thought they are the key points of becoming a culturally responsive teacher. These strategies would be able to engage Aboriginal students as they provide the feeling of assistance in students, which leads to increase in student participation and stronger relationship between teacher and student. One case study of using the culturally responsive pedagogy is the Sky Miller and Kelly Blanford's HAS unit integrating history, geography, and civics. They use the comprehensive list of average such as constant engagement with families and communities, family and community involvement as partners, content related to the local community, and teaching for diversity to create a culturally responsive lesson. The two teachers also observed their class and offered evidence-based approaches to improve their outcomes. In their class, Miller and Blanford had noticed that students were eager to participate and they often had racist opinions and stereotypes. But however, as the unit progressed, it became clear that the students were learning to accept information and change their beliefs. With the summative assessment task, the students were able to get a good understanding of the history of Aboriginals. The attendance data and the assessment data allows us to look at how effective the unit was to engage the students. Looking at all the information, how do I understand my role as a teacher to embed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspective in the curriculum? Teachers play a major role in embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspective in the curriculum. Teachers' role in education influences students, parents, and the community in various ways. As a teacher, we should work together with the school to create and maintain a strong school and community culture. Teachers need to play a role in creating third cultural space where all can meet and grow and learn. One document called Embedding Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islander Perspective in Schools allows us to look at some strategies to create this third cultural space. Some strategies to do this is having professional reflections of our knowledge and understanding of our histories and perceptions of students, and linking it to looking at how this will impact the perception of students. Another strategy includes creating a classroom and whole school ethos by using the curriculum, pedagogy, and community partnerships. These ethos will impact the students' participation. This picture shows how we as a teacher could embed Indigenous perspectives in the curriculum and classroom. As a teacher, I fully understood the importance of my role to embed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives in the curriculum. As a teacher, I should be connecting with the students, school, and community to be involved in embedding Aboriginal perspectives in my teaching, which will lead to higher engagement in students and communities. I need to be the bridge that closes the gap. Looking into all the information, I was able to understand my role as a future teacher in connecting non-Indigenous and Indigenous communities. I was also able to critically analyze and reflect the Aboriginal education policies and demonstrate the significance and relevance of the Aboriginal education policies in our future role as a teacher. Using these information, I would be able to teach my future students Aboriginal perspective of culture and history in a way that is culturally responsive.